In a moment of crisis, a single dad became a hero. Sometimes, heroism doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes, it looks like tired eyes, worn shoes, and a heart that keeps going even when life has been unfair. This is a story about one ordinary moment that turned into something extraordinary because one man chose kindness when it mattered most. What happened that day lasted only a few minutes. But the impact of that choice would change several lives forever. And no one, especially the man himself, saw it coming. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional stories that remind us there is still good in this world, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment. Your support helps our channel, Kindness Story Hub, continue sharing stories that inspire hope and compassion. Mark Wilson had learned how to survive on very little sleep. As a single dad, mornings were rushed, evenings were long, and worry never really went away. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Since then, life had become a careful balance of work, school pickups, packed lunches, and quiet nights where the house felt too big and too quiet. Mark worked as a delivery driver in a small Midwest town. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, barely. Every dollar was planned. Every unexpected expense felt like a punch to the chest. Still, Mark tried his best to keep things normal for Lily. He smiled when she laughed. He clapped at her school plays. He read her bedtime stories even when his eyes burned with exhaustion. On a cold Thursday afternoon, Mark finished his last delivery earlier than usual. He decided to stop by the grocery store before picking Lily up from after-school care. Snow clouds hung low in the sky, and the wind cut sharply between parked cars. Mark pulled his jacket tighter and hurried inside. The store was busy. People moved quickly, focused on their lists, their phones, their own lives. Mark grabbed a small basket and headed down the aisles, calculating costs in his head like he always did. That's when he heard it. A sharp cry. Not loud, but desperate. Mark stopped and looked around. Near the end of the cereal aisle, a young boy sat on the floor, his face red with panic. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old. His small hands clutched at his chest as he gasped for air. At first, people hesitated. Some slowed down. Others looked away, unsure what they were seeing. Mark didn't think. He dropped his basket and rushed toward the child. "Hey, buddy," Mark said gently, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" The boy tried to breathe but couldn't. His eyes were wide with fear. Mark's heart slammed against his ribs. He'd taken a basic first aid class years ago for work. He remembered just enough to know what this looked like. The child was choking. "Someone call 911. Mark shouted. A woman nearby pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. Mark positioned himself behind the boy, careful but firm. His movements were calm, almost automatic, even though fear raced through him. He wrapped his arms around the child's small body and began abdominal thrusts, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3. The boy's body jerked. Nothing. Mark adjusted his grip and tried again, whispering encouragement the whole time. "You're okay. I've got you. You're not alone." On the fourth thrust, something small flew from the child's mouth and hit the floor, a piece of hard candy. The boy coughed. Then cried. Then took a deep, shaky breath. The sound of that breath broke the tension in the aisle. People gasped. Someone clapped. The woman on the phone told the dispatcher the child was breathing again. Mark lowered himself to the floor, holding the boy steady as he sobbed. Only then did Mark realize his own hands were trembling. A moment later, a young woman ran toward them, her face pale with terror. "Oh my God," she cried. "Evan." She dropped to her knees and pulled the boy into her arms, crying openly now. I turned away for 1 second. 1 second. "You didn't do anything wrong," Mark said softly. "He's okay now." The woman looked at Mark like she didn't know how to speak. Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my son." The ambulance arrived shortly after, but Evan was fine. The paramedics praised Mark for acting so quickly. Store employees offered him water, a chair, anything he needed. Mark waved it off. "I need to pick up my daughter," he said quietly. The boy's mother insisted on getting his name. "Please," she said. "I need to know who you are." "Mark," he replied. "Just Mark." That evening, Mark picked up Lily and drove home as usual. They ate dinner. She told him about her art project. He listened, smiling, though his mind replayed the moment again and again. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Mark sat alone on the couch. His hands finally stopped shaking. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, pride, not in himself, but in the fact that kindness still mattered. The next morning, Mark woke up to a phone call he didn't expect. It was his manager. "Mark," he said, sounding surprised. "Did you save a kid at the grocery store yesterday?" Mark blinked. Yeah. I guess. Well, the boy's mom works for the local news. She told them everything. They want to talk to you." Mark almost said no. He didn't like attention. He didn't feel like a hero, but Lily overheard the conversation. "You saved a kid?" she asked, her eyes wide. Mark nodded. "I just helped." She hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you, Daddy." The interview aired that night. Mark spoke simply. He talked about being a dad. About doing what anyone should do. What he didn't expect was what followed, and neighbors started stopping by to thank him. A local diner offered him free meals for a week. Parents at Lily's school smiled at him differently now, not with pity, but respect. A few days later, Mark received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a note from Evan's mother. She wrote about how scared she had been. How she kept thinking about what might have happened if Mark hadn't been there. She thanked him again and then explained something else. Her company was hiring. They needed a logistics coordinator. Stable hours. Better pay. Benefits. "I know this might be strange," she wrote, "but if you're interested, I'd love for you to apply. Not because you saved my son, but because the world needs more people like you." Mark sat at the table for a long time, holding the letter. For the first time since his wife's death, the future didn't feel so heavy. Months later, Mark started the new job. Life wasn't perfect. Money was still tight sometimes. Single parenting was still hard, but something had changed. Lily saw her father not just as someone who struggled, but as someone who stood up when it mattered. Someone who chose courage over fear. Kindness over hesitation, and Mark understood something too, that being a hero didn't mean being fearless or strong all the time. It meant showing up. It meant caring enough to act, and sometimes, in a moment of crisis, that choice could save a life and quietly change your OWN. So if you ever wonder whether kindness matters, remember this story. Remember that one simple act can ripple farther than you imagine, because the world doesn't need perfect people. It needs people willing to help right when it counts.